Chris Mason is the WorldQuant Endowed Professor of Genomics and Computational Biomedicine at Weill Cornell Medicine. For GenomeWeb's 25th anniversary, managing editor Julia Caro spoke with him about genomics across the tree of life and re-engineering biology over the next 500 years.
When the Human Genome Project announced its first draft 25 years ago, I looked at your bio and saw that you were actually in college at that time. So, what intrigued you at that time about the project and its prospects?
I had been curious about genetics ever since I was in middle school and thought it was the coolest field because from one, stitch of a fabric of instructions, there were all the sort of mechanisms and sort of layout to make every cell type in the body and to respond to stress and to grow and to change and to adapt. So all that embedding of information into one genetic code endlessly fascinated me then and now. And I really wanted to understand it. And when the first draft came out, it was like amazing. Now we have like the whole book of life, but then we flip through the pages. We didn't know all the syntax. We didn't know how many genes there were. We're still finding genes to this day. Yeah, new genes, new non-coding RNAs, especially. And it was clear there was a lot of work to be done. So much we didn't understand.
And then, so over the past decades, the 25 years that followed since then, you've published some very cool omics studies, so including the New
Oh,
York City
thanks.
subway microbiome project and the NASA twin study, where you were involved in that. So, which of your current projects are you most excited about?
Well, it's like asking what your favorite child is, I suppose. I love all my projects, yeah, of course, but or I wouldn't do them if I didn't like them. But I think several large scale projects that really I think illuminated a lot of mysteries genetically include one large project called the Human Virome Project, which builds off related work in our large global metagenomics project called Metasub, which started as just curious about what was in the subway, and that's now a global project that links to other genomics data, so wastewater surveillance data, patient cohorts, and seeing just how viruses move between populations. Because one thing I've really begun to appreciate is I really like projects that are not just one domain of life. So if you're looking at cancer, for example, look at cancer vis-a-vis microbes and how they might change biochemistry or lead to a higher risk. Things like HPV and cervical cancer, which we now understand very well. But, for 30, 40 years, it was not clear how much microbes in human cells we're interacting and what they're doing with each other, but now we can finally map that. And I find large scale studies that map inter-kingdom and inter-domain of life dynamics very fascinating because we know that there is constant exchange between bacteria, viruses, fungi, humans, and we can now finally see them to some degree. But then also one of my other favorite components is the creativity side of genetics. Now we have genetic maps, but now we can begin to do tweaks and modifications and do epigenome reprogramming or even genetic reprogramming of cells to give them new functions or different functions or to repair disease. So I think the state of the field now is moving from observational to, really interventional and even creative states of genetics.
Let's talk about the political environment for just a minute. So, how has your lab been adjusting to the current shifts in US government funding?
We have been impacted in a real negative way with the threats, even just delays of funding. So I've had students who've lost fellowships, people who have had to, leave the lab, people who've really even debated should they stay in science at all. Really talented young scientists who see the world as a very uncertain place for whether you can get a job, start a lab, complete your experiments, complete your fellowship. So it's I think it's the darkest era of science really since the 14 or 1500s. It's a really dark era in terms of people's faith in data and science, and so it's almost like we need a new scientific revolution to reinforce the ideas of the value of science. But it's been difficult. But I keep telling everyone in lab who's worried or anxious that no perturbation is permanent. This won't last forever, and that it is still the best time ever to get into science in terms of the technology, the tools, the data sets. It's still on the merits the best time ever in terms of the data for science. It's just logistically and financially the hardest time in a while, but it won't last forever.
Right. Yeah, looking to the future a little bit, your lab's website says that you're working on a 10-phase, 500-year plan for re-engineering biological systems, which I guess also means humans, to enable life beyond Earth. So where do you think that will go in the next 25 years and where in the next 500 years?
I think in the next 10, 20, 25 years, you're saying a lot of the interesting and powerful gene therapies that have been deployed even right after birth, or some of them even that have occurred for embryos, they might start to translate to be in utero therapies potentially. I think we'll see more epigenetic reprogramming. So CRISPR, of course, has been a revolution, but there were TALENs before them, and variations of editors before that. So now that it's so easy, I think we can also think about the tweaking of expression and tweaking of the activity of genes versus just adding or deleting or modifying genes states. So I think we'll see a lot more of the epigenome reprogramming tools expand and be deployed because it gives you a bit more control. And then also, I think we'll see more and more people, of course, flying deeper and deeper into space. We might see people on the moon. Maybe in 5 or 6 years, there might be a couple people on Mars. So I think we'll see interplanetary genomics begin and then become commonplace by 25 years, where there's people constant exchange of information and even people by 25 years from now. Certainly, between the moon and very possibly, if things go according to plan, even to Mars, actually. And 500 years, so a lot of the work from 25 to 500 years is expanding our capacity for surviving in these austere environments. So this includes engineered systems that can reclaim and capture all the water and atoms and nutrients from an ecosystem and make sure you recycle them. Actually, on the space station, the ISS right now reclaims about 97, 98% of the water. And so they don't need that much water to be brought up. And they, basically what you're drinking for water today was yesterday's coffee and urine, but it works fine and you can survive quite well. So I think getting the kind of engineering technologies for reclamation and ecosystem engineering perfected would be required for us to survive on other planets, but also to help in remote environments. And then eventually you could even imagine making on-demand pharmaceuticals or creating food in faraway places like the moon, Mars, or eventually farther. And again, that helps remote environments on Earth or austere environments. But then eventually, after 500 years, hopefully we'd learn enough about how to have a self-contained system that allows you to survive from a biochemical, biological, and cellular level that helps us then go towards the next star, which we've mapped out pretty well. And we're mapping out more stars all the time that we have planets around those solar systems that could be habitable potentially. So I think it'll be exciting to think if in 500 years from now, we know of which planets we'd like to head towards, and we have ships that can keep people alive for generations at a time, and then send people on a really big adventure.
So sorry you won't be around to see it, but
Yeah.
it's nice to think about it.
Well, I mean, I actually think it seems, it might seem sad for a moment, but then if you think of people who built cathedrals in the 1500s, that would take 4 or 5 generations just to build a cathedral. I think the splendor of knowing that you're contributing towards a really impressive goal that like exceeds what could be done in one generation is, in some sense, maybe the biggest honor to have for a goal in a life. Is that where it's kind of wonderful that it supersedes your life. It means it's bigger than you. It's kind of humbling in a way.